biting can be normal behaviors for young children, when should we be concerned about these behaviors?
What an important topic. This is also very universal um, because it's Genesis 3, right? Now, it's a concern when it becomes very frequent and the severe aggressivity is a concern, especially if the assaultive physical behaviors can go to the point of harm, or you can tell it could cause potential harm. For example, punching and pushing and pulling and hair pulling, scratching, and then the biting that we're talking about. That can cause a lot of harm, and if it's happening repetitively or for many minutes at a time and it looks like it's not going to stop, that is a concern. And persistent fighting and biting is serious in places like daycare or a congregation of other kids when they're kind of expected to become friends and get along and learn social behaviors. So preschool, kindergarten, during those ages, they start to realize I'm not going to be liked if I'm going to fight and bite like that. And so those are some things to look out for.
Do fighting and biting indicate a deeper mental or emotional problem?
I would say yes, because this can indicate that there is a serious emotional or behavioral problems. For example, more often than not, many kids go unnoticed and they're not diagnosed with high functioning autism spectrum disorder or a severe anxiety disorder or phobias or even PTSD, or they're exposed to some harsh discipline at home, physical abuse or sexual violence inside their home or domestic violence. So sometimes if they're witnessing that or they're experiencing that themselves, they display what they're going through. And we call that taking on the role of the aggressor. When their parent is doing that, they kind of mimic it, or subconsciously they're learning that it's okay to do that when they're angry.
Are there treatments for these issues?
Now, for example, if there's a deeper medical issue, because that could be possible, we need to find out what that is. Mental problems, we have to treat the underlying issues. Sometimes people just address it on the surface and stop biting, without realizing, well, there's a reason behind it. Sometimes we need to teach parents how to address it, how to discover the underlying. So we call that parenting training. Of course, if it's so persistent, parents invariably bring their children to psychotherapy or counseling sessions. And during that time, the professional counselor, slowly using various tools, figure out what the child is going through and analyze their deeper thoughts and feelings. Sometimes they might discover that's the only way to get attention from their parents. Their parents are so busy and they're not grabbing the attention except through something extreme like a negative behavior such as fighting and biting. And medications, this is a debate all the time, but sometimes I do provide that because the aggressive nature and tendencies are so persistent that the potential harm to others or to themselves is always there. For example, what if it's an older child, but there are younger siblings and they're always attacking them, and the parents don't have time to always grab the fighting child, the child with the struggle, and keep them away all the time. And then you can imagine what the younger siblings think about the older brother or sister and being fearful. So sometimes temporarily we do use medications to try to calm the tendency and the episodes until we figure out what's going on.
Do you have any advice for parents or teachers who struggle with a kid who fights and bites?
Yes, yes. Um, it's funny. In the US, there are quite a few people who try to negotiate and, why are you doing that? But I would say that if you're seeing a child of any age in the middle of their fight, to say no and stop as soon as you see that, to say that immediately, and to calmly and firmly tell the child, biting, hitting, this is not okay. It hurts people. When you say that, it starts to teach them about the consequence of how it hurts other people and tries to teach empathy. You can also validate possibly the reason why they're doing that. I know you're angry or upset, but you cannot bite and hit other people. So this is a way to share with them that you know why they're doing it, and you're not blaming them or scolding them or disciplining them due to the feeling, but it's how they're acting upon it. And importantly, you yourself, as the adult, try to avoid biting and hitting yourself. There are some parents who bite the toddler back as if it's to teach them it hurts, so that's why you shouldn't do it. Honestly, that's not going to work, because this is teaching the child the aggressive behavior even more, right? So using words and telling them no. If you see two children fighting, then immediately try to separate them. If you need another adult to hold back the other kid, that's very important. Just telling them to stop, they probably won't stop. Separating them and also comforting the obvious victim if there is, or addressing them both if you don't know who was the victim and who wasn't. But while you're addressing them, is to seek the reason, to seek the why, that, and usually they will say, well, he hit me first, right? And so finding out from both what the cause is. Sometimes there's no logical reason. They just got triggered. And at that moment, you may not really discover, but to end it with, well, whatever the reason is, we have to use our words if you're angry at each other. Fighting and biting is not acceptable. Lastly is to avoid unintentional reward. What that means is sometimes you want to try to stop something quickly, and this is for any negative behavior, and you promise them something, or you say, go to your room and go watch TV. That is an unintentional reward. So there's so many examples, but I just want to mention that if you guys stop fighting and don't fight again, I will give you lollipops. That's an unintentional reward, and they can learn that as a positive reinforcement for their negative behaviors.
Do you have any final words concerning this problem with fighting and biting in children?
Yes. Well, spiritually, we understand where all this came from. The famous first two siblings in the Bible, Cain and Abel. I'm sure they fought a lot, argued a lot, and then unfortunately the Bible records of how one brother murdered the other. And we need to realize on a spiritual level, when we step back, that this is a spiritual problem. Now, the child is not going to understand that if you say, this is a spiritual problem. You must not do that because this is a spiritual problem. Some young children, it's too abstract for them. But we can teach them that there's an outside spiritual force, an enemy called Satan, who loves it when we hurt other people, when we hurt each other. And to teach those concepts of that's why Jesus had to come and die for us, because we were hurt by being deceived by Satan, and then now we got separated. That is the ultimate eternal hurt. But Jesus sacrificed his life for us so that we can be at peace with God again. And so this concept, we can apply it to children about how peace with one another is not only what God loves, but it's exactly what the enemy, Satan, wants to break. He wants people to go at war with each other, fight each other, separate from each other, because he doesn't want harmony. And when harmony is there, when friendships occur, then sometimes that's when gospel is shared and gospel is enjoyed together, and that becomes attractive to other people to want to know this Jesus. So can you imagine? Satan really, really, really likes fighting.